Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. I see a great number of familiar faces, so we are very happy that you're joining us for our monthly Small and Minority Small Business Resiliency series. Of course, we're doing it today in anticipation of hurricane season. As you know, we're going to be sharing some tips and ideas on how to deal with disaster and emergency situations. And for that purpose, we're joined today by Mr. Paul Wumble of Polk County's Emergency Management Director. Thank you for being here, Paul. And before we put Paul on the spot, I'd like to remind our audience that this series is brought to you as a partnership between the Central Florida Development Council and Florida Polytechnic University. And Mr. Rick Maxey of Florida Poly is with us today. Rick?
Thank you, Javier, and good morning to all of you. And I want to thank CFDC and Paul for being with us today. We started talking about helping small businesses be prepared for exigent circumstances, such as coronavirus. And then we started thinking there are other ways that small businesses need to prepare, and that is the focus of today's meeting. So I want to welcome each of you today and look forward to having a wonderful session. And also, just to give you a heads up, Florida Poly will be having a separate session on how to do business with the university, and we will be announcing that date in the next week. So thank you very much, Javier.
Thank you, Rick. And yes, keep us posted. You know, doing work with the university is always an important area where small businesses can take advantage of. With that said, welcome, Paul. Great to have you here. For those of you who don't know you, I'll say he's probably the hardest working person in Polk County. I do have the best job in Polk County, but Paul does a lot of good for us. So Paul, take it away.
All right, thank you, Rick. Thank you, Javier. Let me see if I can get my screen going. Javier, can you see my screen now?
Yes, sir, you are good.
All right, perfect. So I don't know about the hardest working. There's a lot of folks, especially just in the context of COVID, that have been working many hours, many long hours. So we'll talk a little bit about that toward the end. So I want to talk a little bit today about what in Florida and here in Polk County specifically, what county emergency management does. We all do many of the same things around the state, but each county is organized a little bit different. So I'll give you some things that we do you may not know about. We'll talk a little bit toward the end really about the Emergency Operations Center. And that's where CFDC and our partners come in, and how we would connect with the business community. It is super important from our perspective for all businesses to have a disaster plan. It's really important for small businesses, especially, you know, we want people to be able to go back to work after a disaster. We want your business to stay open. You know, keep people to work, keeping them at work is a super part of recovery. The pandemic has changed kind of how that looks a little bit. So, you know, as we go forward and do some after action reviews and learn from the pandemic, that may change how we, some of the processes in place. You know, it's generally been after a hurricane or after a fire or a tornado and those kind of things. So we always try to learn when we have an event. And unfortunately, we've had a really long event here with COVID, and we're ready to move on. So with that, let me run through my slides, and then at the end, we'll have time for questions and answers. So a little bit about the Polk County Emergency Management Division. First of all, we're a county agency. I'm part of the county's public safety group, along with fire rescue, code enforcement, and county probation. Joe Hallman Jr. is the deputy county manager of public safety. So I report to Chief Hallman, who reports to the manager, and then obviously to the board. Why do we have emergency management? In Florida, Statute 252 is our emergency management statute. and it requires it requires us to exist. It requires that there is a county emergency management program. I like to tell some of my compadres that I'm required by Florida law to be here. Well, they may not be, but that's okay. Basically, our job at the county level is to coordinate countywide. You'll see as we go through and talk about some of our specific programs, we're really behind the scenes. If you see me on TV or you see us in the news, it probably means a bad thing. It's been a bad day, and we don't want to do that. So while we work for the board, we have many partners. Really our job, one of the kind of our taglines is we don't play the instruments. We got to make sure the band is together, it's on time. You know, the right note is being played. And that's in a county this big with as many agencies, as many jurisdictions, from government, nonprofit, faith-based, business and industry. That's an ever-moving target. So that's really in a high level of what we do. And again, that's Florida statute. Every county in Florida has an emergency management program, but we're all different. We all do different things, and that's no different than any other part of government. Here in Polk County, we have 3 programs housed in 3 different locations around the county. I'll run through those really quick. Our E911 Addressing and Operations program is housed in Bartow. The traditional EM emergency management program is here at the EOC. We're on the public safety complex out with the sheriff's office, utilities, et cetera, out on County Road 540. And then the radio services still at the air base. And all of our programs really are countywide programs. We touch every jurisdiction, every city, and a lot of that's by statute, rule, whatever, just by the nature of what we do. First, that is our E911 Addressing and Operations section. There's 2 or 3 parts to that program. The county has an ordinance, and this for businesses, especially new businesses. One of the things that's important for day-to-day work is, if you have a store, an office, make sure your address is posted. When you call 911 an emergency, you need police, fire, or an ambulance, they need to be able to find you. And the big part of that is making sure your address, the numbers out front are clearly visible from the street. Can they be seen at night? So our ordinance, we do addressing for almost all of the county. There's a few cities that do their own, of course. The goal is to make sure that the responders can find the location. So we administer that. So all these, when you have new subdivisions, new stores, new businesses, when all those come into play, we want to make sure that the address assigned, follows the ordinance. You don't want to have duplicates. You don't want to have conflicting addresses in more than one city, and that's a big part of what we do. The other part of that program is that the actual 911 system. By Florida law, the Board of County Commissioners is responsible for the actual 911 system in each county. That's the phone equipment, the network equipment, the 911 database. We're moving into what's called Next Gen 911, which is really GIS map based. So as we move through time, we updated the system itself a couple of years ago. All that work requires us to work. We have 4 what we call public safety answering points in Polk County. Those are where 911 calls get answered and or transferred to. The 2 primaries are the sheriff's office, and then the other is Lakeland PD. So if you're inside the city limits of Lakeland, you call 911 from a cellular phone or a landline phone, wireline, whatever, those calls go to LPD. Everything else in the county goes to the sheriff's office. If they need service from either Lake Alfred PD or Bartow PD, they still dispatch themselves, and that's where the calls would get transferred to. But primarily it's the sheriff's office. They dispatch for almost everybody else in the county for police, law enforcement, fire, and EMS. So it's a partnership between those 4 agencies in the county. And the goal, again, the goal of that whole program is to make sure responders can find you in an emergency, and that the call takers are getting the information they need to get people there. Similar in nature is our radio services program. We're responsible for the countywide public safety radio system. A very unique feature of Polk County is government countywide is that all of our responding agencies, they can talk to each other. Now, the city of Lakeland has its own radio system. But what that means is if we, day to day, or even during, hurricanes or large scale incidents, a good example was the Sun and Fun fly-in just from a week or two ago. Everybody that worked that event can talk to each other. In many other counties, even some here in the Tampa Bay region, that does not happen. Our system's been in place since 1998. The board invested a long time ago in that technology, and the goal was to make it really a county-wide system. We actually serve 4 counties: DeSoto, Highlands, and Okeechobee. DeSoto, Highlands, Polk, and Highlands. All those counties can talk. We can be roaming around. Basically, if you think it's cellular phones, when you used to roam on networks, anybody from those agencies anywhere in that geographic area in Central Florida can still talk, just like they're sitting at their home area, home station, home whatever. And we do a lot of other radio related microwave technology. A lot of the interconnects between facilities, buildings, et cetera, are handled on our network system. So we work closely with county IT and all the other partner IT divisions to keep all those connections in place. There's a whole host of things we do in the radio services program. Again, all behind the scenes. We've got towers all over the county to make all this happen. And it really is a 24/7 operation. Again, investment by the Board of County Commissioners to make all that happen and to keep it going. We service all the cities, state agencies, federal agencies, et cetera. All right, so finally, the emergency management program, which is really the what we call the traditional EM program, and is really the focus of today. So what do we do? What do we do when it's not hurricane season? My grandfather used to ask me that. What do you do when it's not hurricane season? And my answer was, well, we get ready. What are you getting ready for? We have a whole host of planning initiatives, county plans, plan reviews. Some of those are required by Florida law. Some of those are required by federal law. Some of the Florida law. So there's actually, Rick mentioned legislative session earlier. Of course, with the pandemic, there's been a whole flurry of statutes and rulemaking and bills. And one of the things that's going through that will happen is an update of planning for pandemics. Part of that, from what I saw on a House bill that was just amended this morning on the floor, is that pandemic plans of all state facilities, offices, campuses, et cetera. So Florida Poly, that's you. I believe you'll have to coordinate those pandemic plans with our office, with each county emergency management office. We went through a similar operation after September 11th with COOP, continuity of operations plans, where every state facility had to have a COOP. And that was done by executive order by Governor Bush at the time. So now we'll have some legislative, more duties, other duties as assigned by Tallahassee. So we'll have to see how that plays out. But so a big part of what we do is around planning. The counties, a lot of times we get asked, especially by businesses, about what are some of our hazards. Our county local mitigation strategy is actually federally required. And we just updated that last year. All of our plans have to be updated generally every 5 years. And that is the official hazards analysis for Polk County. And it deals with the types of hazards, the frequency, their impact. So if you ever need any of that type of information, you can let us know. It's readily available. I mentioned the state agency plans. One of the things we do by Florida law is review every healthcare facility, hospital, nursing home, ALF, group home, et cetera, that are licensed by the state. They have to have an emergency management plan per ACA to maintain their license. And every year we have to review those plans. So there's somewhere around 90 facilities in the county, in Polk County, that meet that requirement. And then after Hurricane Irma, initially under executive order by Governor Scott, and then by legislative action the following year, some of those medical facilities have to have an emergency power plan. There was an incident in South Florida where a nursing facility did not have a generator and folks died. So now not only do they have to have an emergency management plan, part of that is a separate document, an emergency power plan. So there's about 50 of those licensed facilities in the state. So all those run through our office, have to approve those every year. Another part of that planning is hazardous materials planning. So if any of your businesses that are on, if you have hazardous materials, especially those that are regulated by EPCRA, the Federal Emergency Planning Community Right to Know Act, we review those facilities every year. We go out, do a site visit, document what you have, or is it, the goal of that program is to get that information to first responders. So they know in the middle of the night, if there's a fire, an emergency, and they're coming to your facility or a facility, what's there, how do they get a hold of somebody? Part of that is mapping out what could happen. You have a release. We look at things like daycares and schools and other critical facilities in the area. And that's a federal requirement. There are penalties. There's a couple of instances in the county where staff right now are working with those businesses. We want them to be successful. We don't want them to be fined by the EPA. So our goal is to make sure those businesses are in compliance and they do what they're supposed to do. There's about 200, or actually a little over 200 of those facilities in the county. And some of those may be like cellular tower sites. There are some retail establishments or warehouses because they have forklifts that are powered by batteries. If there's enough batteries on the property, then that triggers some of the planning requirements because of the sulfuric acid in those. A whole host of planning. Again, a lot of it's administrative and programmatic oversight of those programs required by various laws. Training, we do a lot of training. We're actually the first. We got back to in-person training a little earlier this year, within the last couple of months. We've hosted the county's call center. Last year it was with the CARES money. You may have taken advantage of some of those business funding, partnered with CSDC, and then on the individual basis, all that was casework and whatnot was all in phones were answered out of here last year in our EOC. And then this year, that same group and the same process, until last week, we hosted the vaccine call center to coordinate appointments to support the Department of Health. So for over a year, we've had folks in the building, being in the call center business, working with the community, but we've got training going on back in here today. Hurricane season starts June 1st. We generally start our hurricane readiness in late December or early January. We have a whole host of training that we do. We'll talk about that specifically in a minute. So lots of training, lots of exercise. The pandemic has kind of derailed that and changed how we do training. A lot of it, like this meeting, is done over Zoom. But sometimes it's really difficult to do in-person classroom activity-led training. So we're glad to get that back off the video and back in person. A big part of our program here, and that's really what a lot of our hurricane season training around, is our special needs program. And that program provides shelter or transportation to folks that just don't have other options during an emergency, primarily if they are oxygen dependent, electrical dependent. If the power goes out, they need electricity to keep them alive and well. That's the intent of our program. We've got somewhere around 2,500, and actually I probably could have updated that slide. It's about 2,700 is what we hover annually at. Just from the county side, there's about 400 staff assigned. Every county employee has a disaster role. When you have a plan for your business, a disaster plan, part of that should be, what do your staff do? Well, for the county, we assign folks to either work in the call center, to work here in the EOC, but a big portion of them work in special needs shelters. We have 3 of those. We train together with the Department of Health. They also provide about 400 staff. It's about 800 people total to make that program go. The county provides the logistical and operations support. DOH provides the nurses and the medical support. Our emergency operations center is here where we're housed, again, out on the public safety campus. And it's really designed to be the single, command and control, facility coordination facility. Our job is to coordinate. I mentioned the analogy earlier of us. We don't play the instruments, but we have to bring the band together. And that's really what the EOC is for. By statute in the states and the county's emergency management plan, our system of emergency management in the county starts at the local level, goes up to the county, and goes up to the state, and goes up to the federal government. So while we work for the board, especially if the EOC is activated, our focus is countywide. And that's where we bring in the partners. You'll hear us talk about ESFs, or emergency support functions. That's where we bring in the functional area experts. Business and industry is ESF 18, and that's the same in the state's plan. So at the state level, you may hear references to ESF 18, or here at the county, and that's anybody that really has anything to do with businesses to coordinate damage assessment. And probably most importantly is to coordinate recovery programs. And that could be through Small Business Administration. A good example of that was the business programs that were stood up after COVID, and the CFDC working with many other partners, local economic development councils, certainly the CFDC members and the business industry. A big part of that is getting information out. So that's one example of, how we depend on partners. Total here in our emergency traditional EM program, we've got 7 folks. I bring in the other staff from 911 Addressing to help run the EOC. But the center is designed to bring in all the response agencies, all the nonprofits, volunteer agencies, representatives from the cities. So we activate that all the way from what we consider level 4 as our day-to-day. That's where we're at now. It's just normal operations, monitoring for anything that could happen. And then all the way up to a full activation. COVID has complicated that. Our EOC, for those that been around for a long time, used to be at the Bartow Air Base before we built this facility. We had room for 28 chairs in the old EOC. Here in the ops room, we got room for a little over 100, but we've had to cut that back to maintain social distancing. So it's a challenge to bring in all the right partners and still balance that out. But we bring in all the folks, kind of mentioned that. This is what this slide shows, and that up including state and federal liaisons. So I know that's a lot in a short amount of time, but to kind of close that piece, and I'll talk about some business specific things. Again, our role is to coordinate. Our role, and we've done that through COVID. For a while, we were doing 7 or 8 conference calls and/or online meetings a day with the state EOC in Tallahassee, with our local partners here. We still are doing 1 a week with the county manager's office, with EOC staff, and with the Department of Health to coordinate vaccine. We were doing everyday conference calls with all the community partners around vaccine distribution between us, the call center staff, the Department of Health. So we spend a heck of a lot of time on conference calls and to coordinate information, and to really, that's our job here, is to oversee and coordinate that countywide view. So any questions on any of that stuff before we move on, talk a little bit about some more specific business planning and really your personal planning as well. You can unmute if you got questions. All right, so let's talk about emergency planning. So I mentioned one of the things we do is a hazards analysis. Severe weather, which we're kind of getting just past that for our winter season. Polk County historically, tornadoes are anyone know when our historical tornadoes have occurred, what time of the year? Javier, can they unmute themselves?
Yes, I believe they should be able to. Let me double check.
We can unmute. We just don't want to get the answer wrong.
Oh,
so that is the right answer.
All right. Yeah. So actually December and January with our largest historical tornadoes have been right around Christmas. Some of you may have, if you've been around a while, we had a very large tornado outbreak in 98. In 97 and 98, we tornadoed, we flooded, and then we burned. Not necessarily, I believe it was in that order. With tornadoes, our most impacts historically have been as cold fronts move through in the winter. We still get, we had a small tornado just a couple of weeks ago. We had tornadoes of recently in October, the one in North Lakeland, actually two in North Lakeland in the last 2 years. Luckily, our tornadoes are small, generally occur with little or no warning, just a few minutes. But understanding how that works, so how would that affect your business? How do you get notifications of impending weather? What would you do at your business? Do you have a plan for your employees? Do you know where to go? You know, if you're in the office, on your campus, at work, or personally, if you're at home, you know, it's the middle of the night, you're in your car, you're going to soccer or whatever it is you go to, having a way to get that information is important. One of the things we do is we maintain the county's emergency notification system. It's actually provided by the state. If you go to alertpolk.com, you can sign up, and having a way to get those emergency notifications is super important. Now, we use that system. The biggest user is the sheriff's office, Polk County Utilities, Lakeland Water Utilities is getting on the system now. Some of the other cities use it for things like boil water. So if your businesses, you know, are dependent on, especially water, restaurants, et cetera, and others, being able to know and get those notifications are important. So that should be part of your plan. Hurricane season, 6 months out of the year, June through November. Again, we spend a lot of time getting ready for hurricane season. Our peak is in September, in the first part of the season, and the end of the season. Our biggest threat, which the ones that worry me the most, are great big storms, but we know they're coming generally with a few days notice, but it's the one that could pop up with just a day or two to take protective action. So part of your plan should be, what do we do in a storm? Where do we go? Who stays open? My plan is, I know where I'm going to be if we have a hurricane. I'll be right here. So that means things at home, you know, my house, my family, you know, I'll be at work. So that's part of my personal plan. Your situation will be different. There may be some folks on the phone that work for the county, and they have, again, every county employee has a disaster assignment, and those that will be at work during the storm, especially those here in the EOC or in those special needs shelters, to ride out the storm and help take care of our citizens. You know, that's part of their plan. We got a lot of other, you know, hurricanes. Hurricanes is kind of the easy one to prepare for, but we should. A lot of people don't take it serious. Luckily, we've been a long time. You know, Irma was our last storm in 2017. We went a long time between storms up until the 2004 season, where we had 3 storms come through Polk County. We hope that's a trend that continues. If you're a sports fan, you like to look at trends, and our trending we hope for is anywhere but here. It's my motto. We don't want a storm here, but we have to be ready, because you just don't know. We get a lot of questions about forecasts. Well, what is the forecast this year? All it takes is one. You only need one storm to ruin your week, ruin your business, you know, make your life difficult for a while. So we want everybody to be ready. Other hazards, I mentioned hazardous materials, tornadoes, even wildfire. Those are things that can happen with little or no notice. Generally, they do. So you need to understand how that could impact your business. How do you get notified? What would you need to do? Part of your business planning should be to have records off-site, you know, communications. If something happened, if you had a fire, I follow there's a hotel in New York City called the Wellington. We went up to New York after Hurricane Sandy, and that's where we stayed. Great place. I follow them along on Facebook. If I ever go back to New York City, that's where I want to stay. But they put something out yesterday. They'd had flooding. They had been closed for COVID. They started taking bookings again, and then they had flooding, and they're going to be closed until the summer at least of next year to get repairs made. So if your business closed, how do you reach out to your constituent, your customers, your stakeholders? So that should be part of your plan, is how do you communicate? Can you depend on social media? Maybe. You know, how do you get notifications from government authorities. I mentioned alert poke, and then what would you do if any of those things occur, especially no notice. So again, the goal is to keep your business alive and well. Your planning should be around that. You know, we want your business to be successful. That keeps people at work, keeps your services, you know, being provided to your customers and stakeholders. So, and that's all I had, Javier. If anyone has questions or would like to talk about anything specifically that we zipped through in a pretty short amount of time, I will stand for those questions. Otherwise, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Paul. So yeah, let's go ahead and open it for questions while we change slides here. And remember, there are no silly questions when it has to do with safety. So please ask any questions you may have. All right, we have a very quiet audience today.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
This is Stacy Campbell Dominic. Mr. Wumble, how do businesses normally reach out to you? I mean, I guess what I'm asking is, do businesses normally reach out to you all for assistance? And if so, what is the type of assistance they're requesting in the midst of, a situation, an emergency situation?
If it's in our normal mode, other than COVID, there are various state and or federal disaster recovery programs aimed at businesses. We would push information out. CFDC, you know, serves at that coordinating role, which is, I mentioned ESF 18 earlier. Mm-hmm. SBA has programs, various state level, SBA is federal, various state level agencies have programs. DEO, Department of Economic Opportunity, is the state lead agency for business and industry. Part of what we would need to know here is disaster impacts. And honestly, more importantly than a hurricane or the no notice events, we can get an SBA declaration. The threshold that our various government programs have thresholds. I think everyone's familiar with that. As to business and industry, the SBA is the first federal program that we can get turned on. And that's based on 25 homes and or businesses that are underinsured or don't have insurance. Actually, in businesses, it's only 5. That happened in the tornado in North Lakeland in October of 19. There were enough businesses, small businesses. You may remember, you may have saw some of the articles about the last dairy in Polk County that shut down. They were one of the ones impacted. So if we have a localized no notice type event, could be a flood, tornado, whatever it is, we would want to know here that you're damaged if you think you're underinsured or even probably worse, no insurance. And that lets us go to the state and say, hey, we meet these thresholds. We need to have SBA come down and meet with these businesses and look at them and try to get them as much help as we can. Pandemic wise, and I'll say this, the county still has masks and hand sanitizer. You know, the board bought masks and to give out the businesses, and we gave out almost 1 million, but we still have a large inventory. I know the mask thing is kind of going away, and actually I think CDC is going to release some guidance today through the president about restricting masks. But if anybody still needs those things, let us know here, because we still have a lot. So Stacy, to answer your question in short, it needs to be a two-way dialogue between us and the businesses, ideally through the CFDC, to let us know that they've been impacted and to try to make those connections to programs.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? All right, there you go, Javier.
Thank you, sir. And thanks, Stacy, for your question. Let's move on to the ESF 18, as Paul mentioned, and our role from the CFDC perspective. So I'll give you a little background. The mission of the CSDC is really to support business growth in our community. We want high-skilled jobs, we want high wages. And so what we do primarily is to promote Polk County as, I would say, a global business destination. We advocate for key business issues throughout the community. We facilitate collaboration with the different partners. And of course, this is not only the workshop, but also our role on ESF 18 is part of that. And then we, of course, advance our strategic initiatives. So what does business resiliency mean? Well, for us here at the CFDC, we see it from two different perspectives. One is business expansions, where we connect businesses with technical assistance. We support import and export opportunities for our existing businesses in Polk County. We help those businesses that are expanding with their site selection. If there are any incentives available for expanding businesses, existing business in Polk County, then we will help them with that, and we'll connect them with the right authorities to make sure that they get permitting. The second role really has to do with the ESF 18 and how we support the business needs, and we help coordinate through Paul's office and with the state and federal agencies for disaster preparedness, for disaster response, and disaster recovery, which is really what we're going to be discussing today. I will try to give you very general ideas. We don't have time to go through every detail of what needs to be done. So my objective today really is to get you interested in the subject, recognizing that you have about 33 days to do a plan and prepare for hurricane season. But again, emergencies and disasters don't really follow a given schedule. So the sooner that we start preparing, the better it will be. So as Paul mentioned, the CFDC is designated the lead agency by the Polk County Office of Emergency Management. Businesses in Polk County have the ability to participate if they choose. We would strongly encourage all businesses to participate. So, the message is for all your business partners, whether they're your clients or your service providers or your suppliers, make sure that everybody understands that when the community is affected, it does not affect just one business, but the business community and the community at large. So although the participation is voluntary, we'd really like to see more involvement. And then, of course, we depend on participation by the chambers of commerce, other business associations, and economic development organizations at the community level. So what does Polk County's disaster preparedness plan look like? Well, it really is a combination of a business disaster and recovery planning, a combination of Polk County's disaster and recovery plan, and of course, the public information and educational programs that Paul mentioned earlier in his presentation. And a business disaster preparedness plan really has to do with assessing your own risk. So, what am I potentially going to lose if I don't prepare well for these? And actually, what potentially could I lose if I do prepare? We want to make sure that you as a business communicate with all your stakeholders, and we'll address that in a few minutes, that you do periodic drillings and reviews of your plan. And of course, that you will complete the business impact survey. As Paul mentioned, we can only do as much as we know that we need to do. So if you are letting us know what issues you are facing through an emergency or a disaster situation, then it'll be easier for us to connect you with all the resources and be able to deploy those resources to your benefit. So the Florida Division of Emergency Management says that businesses today must plan for more than just supply and demand. Hurricanes, floods, fires, terrorism, and other potential hazards pose serious threats to businesses everywhere. And I would love to think that you agree with that statement, because business planning is not just about our plan is not just about our marketing plan or even our export plan, but we also need to be mindful of the fact that we need to prepare for disasters and emergencies. I'd like to think that you would agree that when you have the most time is before a disaster, so that would be the right time for planning. During a disaster, your number one priority should really be to keep safe. And after a disaster, then you'll have an immediate action that you'll have to take, and we'll address some of that. And then rebuilding, recovery, what does it look like? Those are the two aspects of dealing with the post-disaster. So before a disaster, let's take a look at it. We do need the business emergency plan. We strongly encourage that you have a family emergency plan and that you prepare a disaster supply checklist. Now, again, this is when you have the most time. Before a disaster, you can actually think with a cool head how you're going to be addressing all those issues as they come. And there are different tools that you will be able to avail yourself to make sure that you do the proper planning. A business plan has to do with your customers, with your employees, with your equipment, your physical space, your records. Are they electronic? Are they paper? And your suppliers. So I'll address a few of those. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail because we don't have enough time, but I will be able to provide you with the resources that you will need to do that. So the Florida website has an excellent tool that you can use. You can register or you can actually prepare your plan based on just clicking on the information, and then you will have a tangible document. It is a PDF, and I strongly recommend that you print that document because power is not a given in times of disaster. So we want to make sure that you have a physical document that you can follow. Now, what does it actually look like? Well, when it has to do with physical space, the state of Florida will ask you for different pieces of information. Are you renting or leasing your business location? There are some tips which they call best practices, which will show on that document, where you're going to be recommended to take a look at your roof, your landscaping. Do you need sandbagging for in anticipation of flooding? Do you need to secure large bookcases, file cabinets, all that good stuff? So what happens if your business is located in an evacuation zone? Whom do you have to notify, and are you being able to get notified? Do you have you connected with the right resources? Have you reviewed your insurance policy? Do you have to plan ahead in case you need an alternate location? When it has to do with suppliers, are they local? Are they outside of your area? But if they're in your area, how are they going to be able to reach you and provide the supplies? Can you rely on purchasing, or do you have to rely on purchasing your supplies on a regular basis, on a weekly basis? Are you going to be able to get them? How about your equipment? Do you use special equipment? Do you need to protect your equipment? Do you rely on connectivity? Do you need internet to be able to run your equipment? So these are a lot of the considerations that you have to make, and that's why we recommend that you follow this plan. How about your employees? How many employees do you have? Do they all know what they need to do in case of an emergency? Do they need to be physically at your location? If they don't have a place to stay, if they need a shelter, can you shelter them in your location? Should you encourage them to prepare their own personal emergency plan? How are they going to communicate? How can you disseminate the information? Are they fully aware of your plan? That I would say is very critical. How do you reach out to your employees? Do you need an outside service because your phone may not be a good option? How about your customers? Are they local? Will they need to buy from you? Do you sell food? that may be a critical consideration there. How do you keep your records? Are they electronic or paper? Are they going to be saved? Who is your record, your cloud provider? Are they local? Will they be affected by the same situation? And so this again is the plan that the state offers. I strongly recommend you go to this website, and I will have it listed, so don't worry about it. There will be access to it. The next website is actually the Ready FEMA website. It's a little bit more complicated. It requires you to download a little widget in your computer, but it's also an excellent tool to use. They have videos. The ultimate result here will be another PDF with a full document. And the good thing with these two tools is that as you answer all the questions that they have, it's going to be customized specifically for your company. It's not, there are a lot of recommendations that are going to be very detailed based on the industry, based on the number of employees that you have, and based on the fact that you either rent or even own your own location. So here are the emergency plan templates, and I will make this presentation available on the website. But the Florida Business Disaster Planning Toolkit and the FEMA Business Continuity Planning Suite. These are great tools. I strongly encourage you to use them. If you need help, and this is what we do here at the CFDC, and you'll hear about the small business development centers as well. What we do is we provide direct assistance. So if you have questions, if you like help in filling this out, if you need someone to walk you through it, please reach out to me. I can schedule some time with you, and if there is a case where you need additional consultation, then we'll be happy to send you information about the small business development centers. So you're not alone. You do have resources. The resources are available to you, and you have people that can help you. Quite honestly, there is really no excuse why anyone would pass the opportunity to plan correctly for emergencies. So how about the family emergency plan? And I won't touch onto a lot of these, but there are additional resources on both websites, the FEMA and the state website. But it's critical that you figure out how you're going to receive emergency alerts and warnings. Do you know how to connect with the alerts and the warnings? Do you have a shelter plan? Are you going to be able to stay at your home? Do you need to go to a shelter? Can you as a business owner offer shelter to your employees? What if there is an evacuation? And then there is family communication plan. This is critical in as much as you need to know how you're going to communicate with your employees. The question here is, does your family as a whole know how you're going to be able to communicate? Do your children understand what your family emergency plan looks like? Do they know where they're going to meet you if you get separated? So these are issues that need to be contemplated as you're developing your own family plan. There is a need for you to plan specifically for your households. It will depend on the ages of all your family members. Does anyone have a specific diet that they need to follow? Maybe something that you can't readily access, or that can be accessed at the shelter. Do you have, or does anyone in your family has medical needs? There are disabilities. Is there a language, a cultural or a religious consideration? How about your pets and your service animals? How are you going to take care of them? And then schooling for your children. In one of the hurricanes a couple of years ago, schools were out for 3 to 4 weeks in some counties. So these are important issues that we all need to plan for. And then, of course, the disaster supply kit checklist talks in general about, do you need sandbags? Do you need a radio? Do you need flashlights? How about your pets? The type of clothing that you're going to need. It's going to be hot and humid. Or is it going to be cold? Any special needs? Do you have a first aid kit? And how are you planning for it? Food and water are critical. Do you have access to them? Have you prepared your home for supplying enough food and water for you, your employees, your family members? How about your important documents? Where do you keep them, and how do you access them? Do you have the right vehicles? If there is flooding, are you using the right type of vehicle? Is it in good shape? Is the gas tank full? Do you have the phone numbers to all your family members? And are there any special needs? And of course, again, the link is there. So I know I'm going very fast through these because I want to get you very interested in the issue. But then again, you will be able to either go through the package yourselves, through the templates, or you can reach out to the different partners that can help you with it. Now, during a disaster, safety is paramount. You need to make sure that you're going to take care of yourself, your family, and or your employees. That you're going to monitor the situation. You're going to know exactly what you need to do when, and do you need to do a last review of your business plan? What if you lost a key employee in the past week, and you need to find someone else to do some of the tasks that individual was in charge of? So it is critical that again, number one, be safe, that you be safe, but it's also very important that you know what the next steps are going to be, and that all your employees know exactly what they need to do given a specific situation. Now, in terms of safety, and again, this is from the state website. Remember, if your local emergency management officials order an evacuation and you make a decision to remain in your business, emergency responders, I would say may, but in some cases will not be able to respond to you during the disaster. You and your employees will be on your own until the storm passes and first responders are able to secure the area. So this is critical. But if your business location is the best shelter that your family and your employees can access, then by all means, but make sure that you monitor the situation, that you stay on top of what's going on, and that you know exactly what needs to be done. And that is all, again, on your plan. So as you review your business disaster plan, you want to make sure that it's complete, that all the areas, and again, I know that, sometimes just going through a document and filling information is just a headache, but we want to make sure it's complete because God forbid the one section that you missed is the one that may be most critical to you during an emergency situation. And I can't emphasize enough the fact that your employees need to be fully aware of not only that there is a plan and that you have a plan, but they understand what the plan looks like and that they understand what the roles are in an emergency situation. A good tool to monitor the situation is to follow the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Agency weather updates. You can monitor it through the Polk County Emergency website. You can monitor through the FEMA website. There are plenty of resources. Just keep in mind that if you don't have access to a phone, or maybe your phone, the phone towers are down, or you don't have power, you may not have internet, then do you have a radio? Do you have a regular FM, AM, FM radio where you're going to be able to get this type of notifications? Are there any evacuation orders? You need to be aware of these, whether you need to go to a shelter, whether you need to, in some cases, go to another city. You need to be aware of those, as well as traffic updates. If there are orders not to follow some routes, then you want to make sure that that you yourself, your family, or your employees are not going to go in that direction. So after the disaster, so what would be your immediate action? Well, first of all, you want to follow those current disaster updates. Do you want to be mindful of the fact that businesses may be ordered to remain closed? What is the status on that? Can you open? Do you need to remain closed? Are there road closures? Is there any travel information that you need to be aware of? Do you have your business reentry procedures in place? What if the roof cave in? You don't really want your employees just to walk into a situation that make it worsened by the fact that you're not following the proper reentry procedures. Are there evacuation and curfews in place? So you want to be mindful of that and that you communicate constantly with your employees and your family members. And then the business damage assessment survey. Again, we can't do anything unless you tell us what the situation may be. And I would encourage all of you, this survey is going to be on our website. It's also on the FEMA website. It's also on the state website. If you fill it out with us, we pass the information immediately to the emergency response system, and that information gets bubbled up all the way to our county, state, and federal partners. So as you fill out the information on that business damage assessment survey, there's going to be a question about physical damage. Is there damage to your inventory, to your supplies, to your equipment, to your business location? Do you need a temporary space? And this is critical. You want to reopen as soon as possible, but if there is extensive damage to your location, then we will be able to help you find temporary space so you can relocate and start serving your customers as soon as possible. The business damage assessment survey is also going to ask about economic damage. Do you lose sales opportunities? Do you have a business interruption insurance? And if you don't, you really need to talk to your insurance agent about it. How can you estimate your physical and economic damage? Do you need to start planning for staff layoffs? Is that going to be an option for you? Are you going to be forced to lay off people based on your ability to reopen your business or relocate quickly? And do you sell food products? This is important because you may be able to actually just take care of your community by selling locally and providing information about the type of food products that you offer. Your FEMA registration is going to be important. You need to make sure that you have a FEMA registration in case that the state has been deemed a disaster zone or a disaster area. And then what are the hindering factors that would prevent you from opening your business? Do you need debris removal? Do you need short-term or long-term capital? How about your customer base? Are they local? Will they be able to access your business? Do you need to make sure that you're addressing your insurance settlements properly? Do you need a contractor because you need some construction training and hiring personnel? How about your financial and business loans? Do you need to talk to your bank and see if you need to redo some of your loans and reassess your payment terms? How about your supplies? Are you going to be able to get them? Do you have water damage? How do you get employees to and from home and work? And again, will you be able to access your business? In terms of rebuilding post-disaster, then you do want to make sure that you have an official re-entry determination for your business, that you access your emergency bridge loan. The state will most likely open the emergency bridge loan. Remember, this is just a loan that you're going to get for a limited number of months. You're going to get about 12 months you're going to borrow these funds, and then you will need to repay them within 12 months. So it is very important that during those 12 months, you start thinking about how to get additional funding and permanent long-term funding to rebuild. So will you need to access the SBA physical disaster loan or the SBA economic injury disaster loans? you know, we've had plenty of information go out on that, and we'll be happy to address it again. But these, whether it's an emergency or emergency bridge loan through the state or the SBA funding, we're happy to have that conversation with you. And again, I had mentioned the small business development centers. And so they are actually the processing entity for your emergency bridge loans. And they also provide consulting services. Not only for your planning for emergencies and disaster, but also for any type of assistance that you may need, including how to process your loan application, and that includes SBA, whether it's the physical disaster loan or the SBA EIDL loan. So in terms of disaster response, well, we need to be able to coordinate communication between the EOC, Paul's team, and the business community. And then we need to understand what the damage is to your business through that business assessment survey. And with that, we'll be able to coordinate with the different agencies and the partners, again, at the county, state, and federal levels, to ascertain the level of damage that you have, and how we're going to be able to deploy some of those tools and resources to you. Our role in disaster recovery includes that post-disaster recovery information that we mentioned, and I won't stop talking about it because we need to make sure that every business connect with us and let us know what issues you've had. We want to be able to identify sites for business relocations, and even for temporary employee housing if necessary. We are going to be your liaison to the state-wide providers for post-disaster business resumption. We're going to be the liaison with the state and federal relief agencies. We are going to be coordinating with the Florida Department of Financial Services, so you can take care of your insurance assessment and claim handling. And we'll coordinate private sector support. Again, it's all voluntary, but there are always going to be businesses that are going to have additional space that you're going to be able to relocate to, or maybe you have additional space that you can offer. And this is the kind of thing that if you can provide information to us, we will be happy to coordinate that. And then, of course, we're also going to track some sites for state and federal relief agencies. So we have the responders on site and providing direct services to all businesses in our community. And again, how we do this, we depend on the municipal economic development organizations. We depend on Polk County Tourism and Sports Marketing. They're a huge partner in what we do. In fact, they actually do an inventory of potential temporary housing. So through hotels and housing rentals, they're able to offer assistance in terms of connecting those in need with the potential assistance that they need. We work with the Polk County Chambers of Commerce and other business support groups, such as the Central Florida Regional Planning Council, and I know we have a couple of their team members on this call. But that really is the extent of what we do. It is a big job. We're happy to do it. We can't do it without our partners, and we can certainly not do it without your participation. So by all means, please make sure that you share this information. And with that, I will open it to some questions. I know that some people, we have, all right, I think I read this a little bit too late. I hope everybody got to see the different slides, but someone said that my slides were not advancing. I hope they actually advanced. But with that, I'd like to open it for any questions that you may have for either Paul or myself, or any other general questions. All right. Thanks, Carl. Any questions? So far quiet here. We addressed a lot of issues. We went through a lot of slides in a very short period of time. Again, I want you to be inquisitive about your own business, how you're going to be able to respond. And we want to make sure that you understand that there are plenty of resources for you. We do have 24 minutes, and I intend to keep you here unless I hear any questions. All right, all right. We don't have any questions, so let's talk about what's next in our series. For our May 26th workshop, we're going to talk about business growth and expansion. We're going to be addressing business planning, strategy, and the different types of assistance. We're going to have a couple of partner agencies working with us on that. For our August 31st workshop, we're going to be talking about domestic marketing, how to develop your marketing plan, products and service pricing, and social media. And for our September 28th event, we're going to be talking about international marketing. How can you reach out to your potential buyers in foreign countries, what your export plan would look like, and then are there any incentives for export opportunities. And our last workshop will be October the 26th, and we're going to be talking about business continuity, planning for a transition, business sales or transfers, and liability protections. With that, I believe you have earned 23 minutes today. We were scheduled through 12, and I think Paul and I just breezed through our presentations. Stacy, thank you. She says, great series, Javier. Thank you, and the CFDC for providing this information. Thank you, Stacy. It's a pleasure. We want to make sure that we provide enough resources out there. God knows that our business owners need these resources, and we want to make sure that they understand that they're available and how to access them. Daryl, thank you for your comment. And unless we have any additional questions, yes, Daryl, do you have a question?
Yeah, I'm sorry, forgive my ignorance. I did jump on a little bit late, so I won't hold you up too long. But I did hear you mention the different disaster relief funds that you guys you assist businesses with. What's the best way? One, there's two parts to this question. What's the best way to have those businesses contact with you or getting contact with you to get a representative to help them with that disaster relief fund? Also, is it possible to have you do this outside of this series platform for another group of business owners?
And so the quick answer is you can send me an email at javier@cfdc.org. I'll take a look at your specific need, and I'll be happy to find you the resources that you need. There are plenty of partners. We have the small business development centers that will be able to help with some of that, and we can connect you with the right resources. And on whether we can do this presentation, we certainly can try to schedule something. Now, the good news is this presentation has been recorded and it'll be on our website. And I will also be emailing everybody a PDF of the whole presentation. So by all means, now if you have a large group that may need additional assistance, of course, we'll be happy to set up some additional presentations. Thanks, Darren. Anyone else? All right, with that, I'd like to extend my appreciation to all of you for joining us today. And I will say thank you for sharing this information, because I'm anticipating that you will reach out to all your stakeholders and make sure that they understand that we do have the resources and that they will know where they can access them. Paul, Rick, do you have any additional comments?
Go ahead, Paul.
Yep. Thank you, Javier, for putting this together.
Thank you, sir.
And I want to thank Javier and Paul. This has been really good. We're looking forward to the future workshops. And also just a reminder that you will receive a notice from me next week about our workshop on doing business with Florida Poly. And we will have as a part of that a representative from the Office of Supplier Diversity for the state of Florida that will also discuss doing business with the state of Florida as a whole. So thank you very much again, Javier and Paul, and thank you all for joining us.
Thanks, everybody. See you next month.